everyone, Malaysian Law Student Network MLSN is proud to present to you the first webinar of our new tenure for 2021-2022, which is titled Encrypting Corporate and Commercial Law. My name is Bethany and I am the Project Director of the Legal Space Department. A little bit story about us. MLSN was founded in 2020. Our goal is to bridge the gap between Malaysian law students from all across the globe. Also, to learn the Malaysian legal industry with access to tips, insights, articles, and resources relating to legal field. On behalf of MLSN, I'd like to say thank you to our speaker today, Mr. Gilfred, and also our moderator, Mr. Gubinder, for joining us today to introduce and share some insights into how corporate and commercial works practically. And now, let me begin the session by introducing our moderator for today's session. Gubinder was graduated with an LLB from the University of London and was called to the bar in the High Court of Malaya in 2020. His areas of practice surround general disputes resolution with an emphasis on corporate and commercial disputes. He is an avid reader and writer and had published several articles and research papers. In his pastimes, he hosts self-help groups and conducts classes for the candidates of the CLP examination. So without further ado, I'll now pass the floor to our moderator today. Over to you, Gubinder.
Thank you, Bethany. Very wonderful introduction of me. I think you've gone overboard. Anyways, a very good afternoon to those of you who are tuning in from the comforts of your own home. Welcome to MLSN's first ever webinar. And thank you for being with us. Today, we have a very special speaker, Mr. Gilfred Ho, who will be speaking to enlighten us on the topic encrypting corporate and commercial. Now, Gilfred is it's part of a very special niche group of individuals who have been in both sides of the spectrum. When I say this, I mean that he was a former senior associate with Screen & Company for 5 years, wherein his practice area surrounds corporate and commercial advisory and dispute resolution. Gilfred then subsequently went on to be appointed as an in-house counsel with Eve Yap, Sabun Malaysia, wherein he single-handedly established their legal department, coordinated the internal due diligence, and the company's first ever 500 million Sukuk program. His current portfolio includes overseeing 3 other affiliated companies in the Asian region. Now, having said that, I think Mr. Gilfred's portfolio definitely far exceeds mine. Mr. Gilfred, could you please say a few words to our audience?
Thanks, Binder, for the wonderful introduction. I think it does me more credit than actually what's written on my CV, but also a great pleasure and be honored to be first speaker for the Malaysian Law Student Network. Kudos to you guys for doing such a good job. Now, the topic that I'll be sharing today will be corporate and commercial law. Now, many people confuse because between these two streams of law, because ultimately one is corporate, the other is commercial. After all, literal meanings of these two words are so similar. Now, let me just share what I think, and what industry perceives these two streams of law are, especially in the minds of practitioners as well as recruiters, because they will always ask you, do you have a corporate law background? So you must think, hey, what are they asking for? Do you have commercial law background? Okay, and what is that about? Yeah. Now, commercial law really is the lawyer or in-house lawyer or consultant that deals with legal issues that occur in the running of businesses. It's the day-to-day kind of operation and transaction. Okay, it's very much a daily. There is no specific area of focus. Whatever that the business requires in terms of legally speaking, that will be covered by commercial law. Now, corporate law, if you ask me, is more specific and niche, but does not necessarily means that it is a narrow scope. Yeah. So, for example, corporate law. When you talk about corporate law, you talk about legal issues about corporations, companies, formations of companies, partnerships, power of directors, rights of shareholders, compliance, Also, a very common area in corporate law talks about the M&A, mergers and acquisitions. Yeah, you have various corporate exercises such as private and public fundraising, mergers and acquisition, takeover, restructuring. Nowadays, you also have. I'll go into that. I'll talk about the key trends in these two areas of law these days. Yeah. So that sums up the differences and definition of these two streams of law. Now, I'll give also an example of commercial law. Yeah. As a good commercial lawyer or a good commercial legal counsel, you need to have general understanding of almost everything, because as a company, you need to have an office, right? So that's the lease agreement or the tenancy agreement. You need to have a permit to run your licenses. You need to have various licenses if you are storing chemicals or if you're operating heavy machineries, right? So that's the licensing and compliance part. Okay, you need to also have general understanding in intellectual property law, for example, right? Your trademark, your brand logo. How are you going to protect that? Yeah, your copyrights, things that you produce. For example, when it involves a manufacturing process, like if you're working for a pharmaceutical company or KFC or Coca-Cola, then you need to know the trade secret law and as well as the patent law. You need to have a good understanding on contractual principles, because you'll be handling a lot of disputes, sale of goods, supply of services, regulations, how to recover that. Basically, somebody who is a good commercial lawyer is somebody who knows something about everything and everything about something. Yeah. Now, for corporate law, yeah, I will start with corporate law. What are some of the recent trending topics? Right, we have anti-bribery and corruption compliance, because recently Malaysia introduced a Section 17A MACC Act, which says that a director can be personally liable for the corrupt act of a company or an employee or agent of the company. So this raised a lot of eyebrows in the boardroom. Directors be like, hey, we need to put in adequate processes to cover ourselves in case this sort of things happen. So this raised the awareness in terms of compliance with anti-corruption law. Also, you have a lot of we see a lot more companies in distress because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah, so we see a lot more corporate restructuring, for example, or you need the court to step in to rescue the company. So you have a lot of applications for judicial rescue. You have a lot of voluntary creditor arrangement, to protect the company from insolvency suits per se, while the company recovers from these difficult times. Yeah. Now, some of the recent trending topics in commercial law, for example, is we see a rise in commercial fraud, fictitious contracts, phishing emails. Yeah. So how do companies protect themselves from these aspects? What are the things you can do to immediately recover or at least freeze the assets that have been stolen or channeled into fraudulent accounts? Yeah, you see a lot of course, during the MCO, you see a lot of force majeure clauses being interpreted and being invoked by companies. So force majeure clause is one boilerplate clause. It's a standard clause that nobody ever bothers to take a look twice when you're actually reviewing a contract. Sometimes it's being taken for granted. Some contracts might not even have force majeure clause. So what do companies do in that situation? Can I go for frustration of contract? What is the threshold? So these are the things that concerns commercial law. You need to be handy. You need to be somebody who gives proposals and answers. Most of the time, the law is a logical thing. The law does not propose illogical ideas and solutions. So your solutions, if you do not know whether your solutions are right or wrong under the law, but first of all, it must be logical. Because if it's illogical or it's not practical, then most of the time it is when you checked it, it is actually not the law. It's not the law says. The law always makes sense. Yeah, that's what we always say. Now, so that pretty much sums up the differences between the corporate and commercial law. And I've also given you recent trending topics in these two areas. The cases and work that I usually handle. Now, for corporate law, what I've done in my experience is that in my current position, I'm attached with the finance department of an MNC, which means I review a lot of funding documents, loan agreements, facility agreements, guarantee documents, as well as we recently established a 500 million ringgit Sukuk program. Yeah, so you will be doing a lot of reviewing of documents, agreements, ensuring, for example, board resolutions are properly drafted and passed to approve the borrowings and transactions. Now, each different bank loans will have different wordings, but most of them are actually more or less the same. It is those wordings that you need to be sure, and as you will be, it comes with experiences. You will know that bank usually have a covenant to say, look, you cannot put any mortgage on your existing property or assets without first asking for our consent, things like that. There are also M&A activities. During COVID-19, because a lot of companies are restructuring, they are entering and exiting their field of business. Investors are leaving and also investing into new things. So there are a lot of mergers, acquisitions, takeover. So during these M&A activities, corporate lawyers will be involved in negotiation, pre-negotiation agreement, such as prior to contracting, you have like non-disclosure agreement, confidentiality agreement. Also, you will have things like heads of terms or memorandum of understanding before you actually proceed to drafting the full and final agreement. You will also go through what we commonly known as a due diligence process, a due diligence of the company by getting all their contracts, all their licenses, So you are then supposed to advise your client as to whether this company is legally sound. So what I like to call a due diligence exercise is a legal health or legal medical checkup on a company, right? You will then see whether this company has the necessary documents, whether they have paid their liabilities, whether they really own the land that they say they own, where they are situated on. Okay, most of the times because of COVID, due diligence are done via a virtual data room. But on and off, you still need to go and do the physical inspection to make sure the factory is really there and not just your client is not just buying a brochure, Now, also, very importantly, corporate litigation. What I've just said is non-contentious corporate side of things. There are some lawyers also who practice in corporate litigation side of things, and this includes things like boardroom tussles. What if three directors can't see eye to eye and the other director just voted for one side? What happens in that situation? Or for example, if your holding company appoints or nominate a director to sit in one of the subsidiary, what happens if that director refuses to take orders from you? What are the duties of the directors? How can you remove the director before it causes irreversible havoc to the company? Yeah. So more often than not, you will see a lot of injunctions. You see a lot of declarations. You see a lot of court orders to prevent things from meeting EGM from being held. Court asking directors to be personally undertake to not do any action until a court decides on this issue. There's also a minority oppression action, where if you are minority shareholders in a company, and they consistently issues new shares, to dilute your the voting rights of your share. So these are what we call common terms bullying, but in legal terms minority oppression. When it comes to commercial, the cases that are usually handled far-ranging, but most of the time this is when people don't see eye to eye in terms of contractual interpretations. Yeah. And also non-delivery of goods, non-payments, delays, basically falling short of what they agreed to perform in terms of standards of the contract. I also personally developed a liking and fondness for fraud investigation and asset recovery, because it is quite dramatic. When that happens, usually you see a lot of Moriba injunction. In one of the cases that I've done, actually, we obtained an order called an Anton Pillar order, which means the lawyer, together with supervising solicitors, go and knock on the defendant's door and say, look, this is an Anton Pillar order, equivalent to like a search order, like a police, like a warrant, goes into your house and started collecting whatever evidence they think is relevant to the case. So this is one of the most invasive court order that you can get in terms of civil proceedings. Usually this is a criminal proceedings, like SWAT teams coming down your door, going to your place, arresting people and all. But Anton Pillar is a civil remedy or options available, which is quite intrusive, if you ask me. That would be a good experience if you get to be in a fraud file. I also give a lot of intellectual property consultations. For example, when you register a trademark in Malaysia, how do you then extend it to cover the rest of the world, right? And what happens if in a jurisdiction you have an opposition to your trademark to say that it is quite similar and all that? So how do we manage with external party to decide whether to take action to oppose or appeal that particular country's registry's decision on your trademark registration? Also, compliance. I make sure that the company complies with personal data protection, what I call the ABC training, anti-bribery and corruption training. Yeah, so these are all very important in terms of the commercial aspect. Now, the last part I would say is who do I usually work with or deal with in my experience, both in-house and practice experience. See, of course, when you talk about clients, usually they are either individuals, right? Most of the time, if you take a case from a small business, it will be the owner or the founder. If you take a case from a medium-sized company, you might be talking to their manager, or HR or admin manager. If you talk about global MNCs, you're talking about the head of legal or legal counsel, right? So unlike former days, clients these days are very sophisticated, and many have either been trained or have practiced in legal industry before. So gone are those days when you just tell your client, hey, take this pill, it's gonna solve all your legal problems. They will just take the pill and swallow it and say, okay, let's hope for the legal problems to be solved. Nowadays, your actually what I call clients will actually Google up their symptoms, and they are even more, even more senior than you. For example, me, 6 years or 7 years PQE, could be dealing with an in-house counsel who have 20 years experience in the shipping line, So a lot of times clients nowadays are getting increasingly demanding, and I would say difficult, but demanding and have higher standards. So we must not let our ball game drop also. Yeah, we must always improve and read to keep up with the updates. Now, my experiences, so other than clients, okay, I want to also talk about colleagues. As a lawyer, most of the time you won't find yourself dealing with only lawyers. You will work a lot with consultants. Yeah. For example, in a merger and acquisition, you will be working a lot with external lawyers, solicitors from other jurisdictions. You will be working with valuers who tells you whether or not your asset is worth that much. You'll be working with tax consultants, accountants. You'll be also working with what I call a business strategy consultant who tells you about, in that jurisdiction, what are the norms of doing business, what are the rules and regulations that you have to be aware. Yeah. Now, I have two things to say when dealing with clients these days. First of all, not everybody likes lawyer. That is the truth that you see. Because a lot of times when you mention that you are a lawyer, and they think that you will be quite disruptive, right? Because you are going to say, no, you cannot do this. No, you cannot do that. So my advice is actually, do not be a disabler. Be an enabler. Be an enabler in the sense that highlight to them what are the risks and let business people decide on commercial decision. Yeah, because one will tell you, if you were to look at all the risks and say no to every risk, then we will just wound up and not do any business. Every business decision has risks. So the job of a commercial or corporate lawyer is to tell them, hey, look, here's the risk, here's the red flag. You decide to ignore it or not. Now, having said that, don't be a yes man. Nobody hires a lawyer to be yes man. People often hire lawyer to tell them, no, you can't do this, but here's an alternative, here's a solution, right? So clients, they don't like you to be a yes man nor a disabler, but you must always tell them what are the risks and offer them solutions and alternatives. So those are the two things I have to say from my experience dealing with clients and clients these days. Yeah. So much for my introduction. I think I've given a brief overview of commercial and corporate law, my experiences in these two fields, as well as the clients and my experiences dealing with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Guilford. I think what a wonderful introduction and overview you gave us, from clients all the way to what you must know, to understanding what the nature of the job is. I think it's a wonderful overview. But let's go into it a little deeper for our audience, because I think they want to know this. You mentioned earlier, you said people must know something about everything and everything about something. So now the question here for you, Guilford, the first question is, would you go into an in-house counsel portfolio first, or would you start in private practice first?
Now, I know a lot of even my juniors these days have told me that the market is really soft. Law firms are very cautious in hiring new candidates. Even taking interns nowadays is difficult because they don't want a third party to be in the office. To them, that increases the risk of COVID-19 infections and all that. So no doubt, market is soft, right? So to my view, right, I think that people shouldn't be choosy these days. If there is an opportunity that you think is related to your career progression or related to law, whether it's an internship in a company or internship with the NGO, or internship with the charitable organization, right, you should grab it. Because having some experiences, albeit irrelevant, is better than having no experiences. Now, I'm not sure what is the law or regulation when it comes to do you have to be admitted or get a pupillage spot immediately right after you pass your bar, or pupillage or CRP. Now, if the case is you don't have to immediately do that and you have a validity period or window where you can get your pupillage later, actually to me, answer is straightforward. Let me tell you this scenario. If you are a law firm hiring candidates, one is a fresh grad, the other one has worked in-house, for example, or have related legal experiences somehow interning or working as a paralegal in firms. Which one would you prefer? Of course, to me, if you ask me, of course, I would prefer to hire the person who has some form of experiences. Not necessary to say that fresh grad is better, but commercially, the decision is preferred to have to have a candidate with some experiences than fresh grad, if you ask me.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Guilford, for that is an amazing answer. I think that is the golden answer actually to what our audience wants to know. But you took the other route, isn't it? You started in private practice first, and then you went over to in-house, right?
Exactly, Binder. What happened to me actually is while I was doing, I mean, market in 2014, of course, is a different sentiment. Back then, when I was in BPP Manchester, Screen had sort of like a talent program and then immediately started hiring on campus itself. So we didn't really have to send out cover notes. Those were, better times and happier times actually. Yeah. So during these times, I think we need to do something else rather
Right,
than just
right,
sticking with the graduate, pass, ELP, then pupillage, then so on and so forth.
right.
The
So there's no need to
traditional,
follow that norm anymore. We should
no, but
actually improve. Yeah, go
exactly,
ahead.
yeah, exactly,
Great.
yeah. We need to adapt. Yeah, those who adapt and change will prevail.
Right, right, right. Now, since you've been on the other side of the spectrum, actually you've been on both. You started with private practice first. What are the benefits that you think that you brought over into in-house? Say, for example,
Um,
the advantages or what you felt that you contributed strongly because of your legal background at the start.
Now, because I came from a litigation background, I think my company benefited a lot in terms of they needed somebody who actually look at the litigation aspects. And when it comes to drafting agreements, what I can say is anyone can have standard agreements. Basically, all the companies, if you're not talking about a startup or if you're not talking about very niche industry like Grab or Bitcoin or fintech, blockchain, okay, almost all the commercial agreements, sale and purchase of goods and all that, yeah, we have standard templates. So anyone can just fill in the blank. But it needs somebody with experience, especially looking from a litigation perspective, to secure your clients' rights. So I think I brought in that benefit to my current company. Yeah.
Right, right. Because from what I
Mm.
understand, actually, Mr. Guilford, uh, usually the legal arm of the company, especially in Malaysia, we don't really treat that as sort of like an investment or profit generating arm. But actually, it's more towards a saving arm in terms of when litigation comes in the future. So you actually preempting things and you're prompting things in the event that it happens.
Correct. In fact, many organizations sees legal department as a cost center, whereas in the law firm, you are a revenue generating department because you brought in revenue. In an organization, business organization, you are just seen as somebody who says no, no, cannot do this, no, cannot do that. You're seen as disruptive. Now, there are ways to navigate through this. Maybe I can share a bit on the skills needed to be, say, a good commercial lawyer.
Yes, please go ahead.
Now, needless to say, you need to have a strong command of language drafting skills. Very basic. People expect this from a lawyer. You need to be good with the words. Yeah. So grammar and all that. People are, when people see how you speak, how you present yourself, how you write, people respect that. People respect good work. For example, one time I was in court of appeal. The panel asked, what is the cost that you're asking for counsel? The person stopped and say 3K. So the judge was like, judge is an old timer, 70 over 65 years old. 3K? What is 3K? 3K, yes, 3K. Then the judges started having I heard some murmuring from the bench. The judge said, you mean 3,000? Yes, 3,000. The lawyer got a scolding. Say la 3K, say la 3,000, don't say 3K. This is the courtroom, not Pasar Malam. So the judge got embarrassed in front of everyone. So it's the use and choice of wording. Yeah. Now, also, business acumen. These are, you probably find this topic alone, probably 20% of the book of what they don't teach you in Harvard Business School is business acumen, right? And it is something that's very difficult to explain also. I think it's you need to develop that through experience. And if you're lucky, a good leader and boss in an organization that helps you realize that actually everything that you do must be in good commercial principles and advance the company's interests. Sometimes you may offer a legal opinion that says, okay, you cannot do this. Now that, of course, is a very good opinion, legal opinion, but it's not a good business opinion. How do you gel these two and make your legal opinion into also a good business opinion? Now that is when you start showing your values, because people in the organization will see that you are not just telling us no, don't do this, but you're actually offering a different ideas. We have this common misconception that we think that business people make better business judgments and all that. Actually, sometimes lawyers being lawyers, very creative and thinking out of the box always, how to win cases, and all that. Actually, sometimes lawyers come up with the best commercial strategies and advices. Yeah, so that's what I have to say. Have a good business acumen, develop that by always looking at why did people decide it this way and not the other way, right? Be introspective, be always look into the reason behind that decision. Yeah, do not be a rat who is just so busy running on the treadmill and you forgot that the big picture. Look at the big picture. That's what I have to say. Other skills are such as you must be aware of regulations governing the company. Yeah, different departments in the company will expect different knowledge from you. For example, human resource HR department, they deal a lot with personal data, so PDPA is a must. Procurement and sales, sourcing, this deals a lot with the tender exercises and projects and all that. You need to be very strong in terms of anti-bribery policy of the company. Operations of the company, you need to be, you need to know the Occupational Safety and Health Act, OSHA. What I also actually recommend is to develop these skills. You need to read a lot, right? Nowadays, there are so many blogs, articles out there by different lawyers, especially during pandemic time. People have more time to sit down in front of their laptop and start writing about the law, right? Read news articles or newsletters from different big firms because they actually summarize the recent developments of the law quite succinctly for you to understand. Also, last but not least, people skill. How to manage expectations, how to win at negotiations. Yeah, because more often than not, your company, when they find it difficult to negotiate at a particular project, right? They might just ask you, hey, Gilfred, come and join us for the client meeting next week. Need you to negotiate on this point, this point, this point. Yeah. So I didn't expect to be called, to those meetings because I thought, isn't that supposed to be business people kind of job scope, not a lawyer's job scope? But don't be surprised because people see that, lawyer, you have good negotiation skills. It's just a different subject matter. So they will invite you to these meetings. Never be afraid to try out. And I guarantee you that you always learn something new and it will be all worth it. Yeah.
Thank you, Gilfred. Now, on that note, actually, the key takeaway that I got from it is there is a problem. The opinion generated, of course, you have to reflect the realities of the problem. But you cannot only give the realities of the problem, you have to give the solution to solve the problem. Now, I was reading one article from Apple the last time. Their general counsel said that their job is to go as close as possible to the line of breakage and still bring them within the purview of the law. So they are trying to stretch the law as far as they can. Now, having said that, Gilfred, solution here must be always logical and practical. As when I think when I was a pupil, I used to draft opinions for my master to give to the banks because the banks will always be saying, okay, we cannot release the loan simply because there are some issues there. We want your firm to give us an opinion. So, of course, we understand that there are certain issues there, and then we will proceed to draft the opinion. And this opinion, of course, must come with the backing of laws and all that, and how that doesn't skirt the law. But this takes a certain amount of skills and experience. How would you recommend that one acquires these business acumen skills?
That is interesting. Now, as lawyers, we are trained to seek knowledge independently. We are trained to read, right? For example, if you don't know about something, we are trained to do research on case laws and all that. That's why you always have research and writing skills in uni and all that. Like I said, being a lawyer, the law updates itself every now and then. If you are born in 1965, your Sales of Goods Contract Act or whichever old laws knowledge will not be applicable in to 2021. So you need to keep yourself abreast with new developments in law. And how do you do that? Read. Of course, I'm not saying that you cannot watch football now and then, or go on social media and this and that. You must have fun. Enjoy life, carpe diem, and all that. But at the same time, we as a lawyer, we must have that skill and interest or habit to learn. Yeah, there are many courses nowadays. Once I seen one of the big 4 accounting firm offered a course on how to read financial statements. It's only 150 ringgit. If I don't remember it wrongly. Or in KL Bar, for example, last night I participated in a fireside sharing session between legal professionals and finance professionals. So there, they exchange ideas, and these forums are also a great opportunity for you to learn and hear stories, and you have great takeaways from these places also. Yeah, but of course, the best places to learn are from your mistakes. I say this to the audience for this webinar because you must make as many mistakes as possible when you are young and junior, because the court, your clients are not that forgiving anymore when you are, for example, my age or my seniority. Yeah. So when you are young, when you start off, you're about to make a lot of mistakes. Do not be afraid at making those mistakes. Most important is one of the lessons learned from those mistakes. I have made embarrassing mistakes myself because we are all humans. So make those mistakes early, make as many as possible, learn from them. Yes. Those are what I have to say to your answer, Binder.
Thank you. Now, Gilford, you mentioned about mistakes, but I'm sure with mistakes, there are many myths also that goes along with corporate and commercial work. Can you please name some of the few myths that goes along with them?
Now, as lawyers, once in a while, you might get certain aspects of the law wrong. Okay, that is very fundamental. That should never be made, actually. Yeah. But the reality is people do make them. You, as a lawyer, you have professional indemnity insurance to cover situations like that. More often than not, it's just interpretations of law that you make or assumptions. Never make assumptions about meanings of words, for example, right? I won one case simply on definition of the meaning of penalty. And I assumed that we are going to lose. I was so sure. I told my pupil master, I told my senior lawyer back then, it's a losing case. It's a losing case. Why clients still want to fight? Then he said, look at the definition of this word. Get Mala's Digest. Yeah. Get the Anandan Krishnan definition, the Black's Law Dictionary. Dig all the definition about this word penalty, right? And see if we can extend the scope or narrow the scope to our case, to win this case. And that I did and won with it, So a lot of times, do not make assumptions. Always drill down to the meaning of the words. Yeah. Mistakes also in, punctuality and all that. It goes without saying. Very important because the judge sometimes might just strike out your case. Once I've heard, that a registrar threw out a file in Kuala Lumpur court complex during case management because the lawyer was 5 minutes late. Yeah, so you never know. Sometimes you get a bad-tempered registrar or a judge, and the judge started forming prejudices about the lawyers who's handling this case, and at the end, who suffer? Your client is going to get the prejudice. Yeah, so punctuality is also very important. Of course, I wish I could go back time, and what I could do more is I could read more. I could actually go for more courses. Had I not been so busy engulfed with work. Easier said than done, sometimes time management is something that I wish I could have done better also during my younger practice, so I could really maximize the times I spent in law firms and all that. Yeah.
But that also goes to say, as just like myself, I think we are really busy. We spend nearly 10 to 15 hours a day working. How do you see in terms of time management and case management? How do you get in between, especially if you still want to have a little bit of fun?
My lecturer used to say, he said, on the first day, of law school, he said, "Behold, from this day onwards, you will eat, breathe, sleep, and drink law." Because it is true that law is all around us. When you get into a car, you drive, it's road traffic, right? You're using a pen, it's a product liability. What if the pen, has harmful chemicals and all that? Everything is governed by law. So there is no escape from law. In terms of time management, it's all about priority. You will have 1,000 things, especially back then I could manage my time better in a way because I was in a law firm, and with law firms, the court set the deadline, everything is pretty clear. Of course, once in a while, you have injunction, which is a bit urgent. You pull an all-nighter. Second day, you slip it off, Also, when you're younger, no problem with the OT and all that, yeah. But now, working in a corporate environment, the client dictates your turnaround time. And trust me when I say that corporate clients can be very demanding sometimes, yeah. They want answers like that, yeah. That expects you to be knowledgeable on this area of law. So it's all about priority. You need to know of all the problems staring at you, which one you need to solve first. Yeah, this is how you manage not only your time but also your stress level. Prioritization, yeah, and delegation. Yeah, what are some of the things that you can actually delegate to somebody and supervise? Like, can I draft this letter, ask somebody to proofread it and fair it and send it out under the firm's letterhead, for example. Use the firm's resources if you have that luxury. If not, prioritization, yeah, and delegation. Yeah, these are two ways how I handle manage my time and also stress, actually. Yeah.
Wow, yeah. I think on a daily basis, we face a lot of anxiety from work, especially when you have 1,000 things on your list and you have multiple lists. Yeah. But having said
Yes.
that, Gilfred, what are the reasons as to what prompted the shift from screen into being in-house as opposed? Yeah.
You see, when you are 25, 26, what they call quarter life crisis, I thought it was a joke, but it turns out that, people say that for a reason, and I've always been curious as to how is it like when you're in the client's shoes, I always see myself as a business or commercial oriented person. From time to time, court practices have its ups and downs, yeah. Of course, you have glorious times winning cases and all that. Sometimes you also can have a case that drags on for slightly too long, So each job, each career, each position comes with its ups and downs, pros and cons. Yeah. For me, the main reason that prompted the shift was because I wanted to be more commercial oriented. I wanted to learn about the running of an organization, and also how businesses are done. Yes. So that is actually my main objective to switch over. Yeah, because for me, I see myself in 5-10 years time. It's gonna be either an further studies in MBA or because nowadays having a law degree actually is very common. You need to have a additional specialized set of skills. Yeah, you need to market yourself as a lawyer specializing in this and that, or you come from a multidisciplinary background. Yeah, so that's very important. So I see myself in that direction in next 5 or 10 years time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Guilford. Now, on that note, actually, would we see you back in private practice anytime soon, maybe in the next 10 years? Would you want to set up your own firm?
Yes, actually, the possibility is always there. Nowadays, I have many friends, actually, even they talk about learned friends who stood on the other side of the case. Now I'm dealing with them. Even after moving in-house, I still deal a lot with lawyers. Actually, I know more lawyers now going in-house than I was in my previous job. Yeah. So the possibility is always there to come back to practice. It's always there. Yeah.
Right. So for those audience who are watching from home, you better keep in view of this opportunity that might come up anytime soon. We don't have an exact timeline, but it might come up anytime soon. So you'll watch out for that. Now, Guilford, one last question before we close off. Okay, what can you please give the audience 5 advices for them to take home?
Yes, actually, before that, Binder, I would like to actually share on one thing that came up to my mind the other day when I was preparing this. It came across, it dawned upon me, the challenges of being a corporate commercial lawyer these days, especially during COVID-19. In this market, we are seeing an influx and of new lawyers, yeah, and job market is soft and all that. Marketing, and personal branding is very important these days. Yeah, on social media, on LinkedIn and all that. You need to people need to know you for something. Yeah, so you need to write a lot of articles, for example. You need to be active to make yourself known. You need to, for example, when you are in an event, I always see in my housing association event, when it comes to question time, people always stand out and say, "Hi, my name is so and so. I'm a lawyer practicing in this. I specialize in this area of law. Now, I have a question. How much trees did you chop down in this residential area?" So to me, half of that time is for him to market himself and promote his law firm, and how many trees are being chopped down in this residential area really is the main question. What I'm saying is, I'm not asking you to ask that ridiculous or annoying question, but think of a way on how to market yourself. Marketing, personal branding, and how to stand out. That is very important. And you don't need to be a very senior lawyer to start thinking about that. You can actually start young. Yeah, and I see many actually law students, younger lawyers are doing that these days. So that actually is a challenge of being a corporate commercial lawyer. Now, before moving on to advice, can I also share some perhaps stereotypes and myths, to our audience in my practice?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Now, one of the myths is that, of course, I've talked about you must get the traditional view that you must get the pupillage or you must secure a vacancy right after pupillage. That is busted because, my advice actually, I personally believe that you can always consider working other jobs, better if they are related to legal before applying for pupillage or vacancy in a law firm again. Another myth is it is always better to fight in court. That is not true. More often than not, people do not want the hassle of going to court. In a court case that I'm handling at the moment, when you need to call witnesses to represent the company, the COO needs to take time off. The CFO needs to take time off. The HR director needs to take time off. They're talking about top management taking time off and disrupting one working day for them to go to court to testify. That is a huge waste of the company's resources. So it is very troublesome. People do not want the hassle of going to court. It is always better if you can settle out of court. Of course, you must get your stakeholders' approval on negotiation terms and settlement terms. For example, if this person owes me 100,000 in unpaid value of goods, and he offers to pay me back 50, can we negotiate and close it somewhere between 80? Rather than going to court and get that 100,000 back. So this is something that you need to think about: the cost of hiring a lawyer, the resources you're going to spend in court, strength of your cases, and all that. Now, another myth is a good litigation lawyer cannot be a good corporate lawyer. I think, to me personally, there are recruiters in the market that thinks that when I hire for a corporate position, I want to hire somebody with corporate background. Yeah. So how did I transition from a litigation lawyer, mainly litigation lawyer, to a in-house corporate role? Right. You must tell your recruiter or your company who's hiring that during your years or of experience handling corporate litigation cases, you have also inevitably reviewed, contractual documents. You have given corporate advices to clients. You have drafted legal opinions on interpretations of certain contract. So there is no such thing as a pure litigation lawyer, or a litigation lawyer cannot do a corporate lawyer's job. Yeah. So it really is how you see yourself and how you market yourself. Yeah. In fact, some companies can see an added advantage, which is you can see things from a litigation point of view. Myth. This is going to be contentious, but I will still say it nevertheless. It is impossible to have work-life balance in legal practice. So many people have come and asked that question to me. A joke that I can share is one time I was in a dinner with a client and my boss. So my boss was sharing, how he came back from, say, a cycling trip in up the Fuji mountain. He was at the Gobi Desert, trekking 2 months ago and all that. My client looked at him and be like, "Hey, how you managed to get such a good work-life balance? How you get the time?" And my boss tapped me on the shoulder. So he worked, I have a life. That's a good work-life balance. But my point on that is actually not so true, because if you work in a place or an organization that always demands overtime from you, then I think that it could also be management issues or the firm's issues. This is of course very subjective. You must analyze the problem, whether or not you are using the correct method of, say, time management, prioritization, delegation. And if all that fails and you still feel overwhelmed from your work, I think, in the long run, it is better to perhaps switch an environment than to feel burnout. And to, many good lawyers actually have given up legal practice because of this and gone in-house, which I think they will become very good advocates in the future. There are firms and companies that respect your personal life and after office hours. There are firms like that out there, good cultured firm. You just have to keep your eyes peeled, and be aware of them. Ask seniors around; they will be able to tell you, "Hey, this lawyer is known for this or that. This firm is known for this or that." Yeah. Now, having said that, do not be afraid to put in the hours and hard work, especially in the beginning. You need to learn as much as possible when you are a junior. I can, then now move on to my advice, Binder.
Yes, go ahead.
Yep. I might not have 5 advice, I thought of 4. I think that's good enough, I think. For the targeted audience, I cannot emphasize this enough. Read. You must take an interest in legal developments. Like all things in life, you will excel if you have a passion for it. And passion is, for some people, they are born with that. For some people, you need to develop that passion, because how can you fall in love with something that you don't know? You need to know it so good, so well that, this is my turf. You're playing on my turf. I'm the Ronaldo. I'm the Ronaldo of the game. Read newsletters, like I said. Subscribe for free to Lexology. I think that's a good place where you can get a lot of updates. Lexology. Read blogs by active lawyers who specializes in particular area of law, like my previous boss, Li Shi. He specializes in corporate law. He writes very good articles. I always read them. Join Mooting. As and when you have the opportunity, join Mooting. To me, that is the only platform for you, only effective and relevant platform, I must say, for you to develop and hone your advocacy skills, research skills, and to build confidence and speaking skills. Yeah, that's very important. Mooting is very important. Now, in university, you are taught basic principles or textbook principles of contract law, offer, acceptance, consideration, etc., etc. You also need to learn practical skills of drafting. Yeah, there are many articles online. Again, those are by international firms who can give a very comprehensive and useful guide on what should be in an agreement. So an agreement can actually be broken down into many parts. Yeah. Of course, in my years in uni, they never taught us what are deemed as operative provisions in a contract, for example, or they said, what are the strategy, or how do you look at boilerplate clauses? Because boilerplate clauses are not just drafted one way or the other. There are so many ways to draft boilerplate clauses, to suit your strategy, commercial strategy. So look at ways to draft contract or review contract, but not just in a textbook way, but in a practical way. And how do you do that? Just Google. In Google, you get a lot of articles that give you a lot of insightful tips. Even I myself sometimes are still Googling and learning about new ways to draft contracts and new ways to understand laws. For example, the other day, I was just reading on disclaimer. So if you see, sometimes people send out email that have these small tiny fonts at the bottom of the email. One very good article that I read on The Economist discuss the legality and also the practicality of these tiny fonts, and actually offered advice on how to make them more enforceable if it goes to court, if it ever goes to court. Now, finally, if you're thinking about internships, you don't necessarily have to just join law firms for internships. Many people I've seen, actually, they do internship in places that you cannot imagine. But the more common ones outside of law are like consultancy firms, big four accounting firms. Consulting firms are actually very interesting places because it is one alternative, and a lot of lawyers do jump over to consultancy at some point of their career. Also, PE firms, private equity. Nowadays everyone is using share market app to do trading and all that, and you have the Robinhood app and all that. People are getting more and more aware in investments and private equity. So consider joining private equity firms also for internship. You will learn things which might not be relevant now, but at some point of your career, you will use it for sure. That's for sure. All experience will somehow come back to you one way or another later part in your career. Those actually are the four advice that I have to say to the audience. Linda, over to you.
Thank you, Gilford. I think they have generally benefited superbly on what you have given them today. I think definitely we have hit the topic on the spot. The overview is done. We went in depth into every issue, the myths, the stereotypes, the benefits in both areas of practice. Now, I think that's all the time that we have. I think I have to give the floor back to Bethany. Bethany, may I invite you to come back?
Yep, sure. All right. I think that basically bring our session to an end. And I would like to express my gratitude to Mr. Gifford and also Mr. Gubinder once again for taking your time out and join us today to share experiences regarding corporate and commercial law. And I believe that our audience will definitely benefit from this truly insightful session. So to our audience, thank you for watching, and we hope you have learned and enjoyed this webinar. Feel free to approach us via Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram if you have any questions or feedback. With that, I wish everyone have a nice day and stay safe and take care. We hope to see you again next time. Bye.